everyone. Welcome to the fourth annual event for Managing Your Mind. My name is Farah Lowe, and I am currently a grade 12 student at Davidson School. I've been honored to be a co-host for the Managing Your Mind conference with Carly Schweigler and to be a part of the youth who helped bring this event together. Before we begin, the Sunwest School Division acknowledges that we are on Treaty 6 and Treaty 4 territories. This land that we share had been long home to the Cree, Saulteaux, Nakota, Lakota, Dakota peoples, and the homeland of the Métis. We who live on, learn from, and care for this land and water recognize ancestors who have walked before us, as well as the generations to come. We make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation to reaffirm our relationship to one another. We are committed to learning together. Today, you have 3 jobs. 1, enjoy this conference and have fun. 2, learn something. Try to take away something and hold it close to your heart, and feel free to share with friends or family. 3, respect guests as they open and share vulnerable stories about mental wellness. Some subjects discussed today might be touchy or sensitive for some viewers. Please listen to your mind and body to accommodate your needs while subjects are discussed. Today is about how mental wellness is significant to each of us and how it impacts our lives. We need to persevere through hard times and reach out for support. It is crucial that we have difficult conversations to raise awareness and support one another. I'd like to introduce grade 11 student from Kindersley Composite School, Carly Schweigler, to share her personal story and to open up about her mental health struggles.
So I would like to share a bit of my personal story with you all. I'm starting off by mentioning that I am sharing this with the hope that it will inspire others to share their own stories. Throughout this conference, I want you to realize that this is real life, and mental health can and will impact every single one of you. I'm currently a grade 11 student at Kindersley Composite School, and some of you may already know me. But when I was about 12, I first began to experience this feeling of overwhelming sadness. It was constant, and I just couldn't figure out what the cause was. Despite the help I was getting, my symptoms seemed to only worsen. I tried to take my own life later that year. I felt as though I had no reason to keep going because shouldn't the medication have helped? Shouldn't all of the coping strategies like journaling, breathing, and going for walks have fixed me? I felt so angry with people who would tell me that I was too young to feel the way I did or that I had no reason to be sad. I stopped going to school entirely. I hated the way that I felt because I believed that nobody understood what I was going through. I felt judged and like I was trapped. I landed in the hospital 3 different times. The first time, I waited for about 8 hours to only get a phone call with a psychiatrist. By the third time, I was admitted to a mental health facility. That was almost 4 years ago now. If you would have told me then that I would be at a brand new school and sharing my story without feeling a single second of shame, I would think that you were crazy. If you would have told me that I would even be here right now, I would have thought that you were even crazier. I don't just share my story just to share it. I share it because I truly believe that if I can impact just one person with my story, then I have done my job. Throughout my journey, I have learned these 3 things. 1, just because something doesn't work for you doesn't mean that another thing won't. I've experienced this firsthand, and I promise you that you will find things that work for you. You just have to keep on searching. Number 2, you are going to come across people who just don't get it. So speak up, make conversation, share different opinions, and ask questions. That's how change is created, and it's how things get better. And lastly, treat everyone how you want to be treated, but don't put up with being treated as less than what you are. Thank you for allowing me to share my story. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you so much, Carly, for sharing your story. Your vulnerability and bravery has inspired many of us to reach out and check on each other when we are struggling. You've truly reminded us that no matter what age someone is, everyone is affected by mental health in some way, shape, or form. Next, I'd like to introduce Liza Dahl and Shelley Eckstein to help us inspire motivation and purpose in students' everyday lives at school. Today, they will start with a video.
I think school is necessary and it's good for a lot of people, but I do feel like there should be a lot more focus on how help with people with mental health and education towards people with mental health with things like ADHD and various stuff like that.
I really enjoy school. I think it's a really good place, especially in Kindersley. It's a really good environment to be around. I love the learning aspect of it, and I'm excited to keep moving up with school. And I think it's a really great way to learn. And
I think school is a good environment, but there's a lot of wasted time.
I think there isn't waste of time in school. I think school is a waste of time. But it can also be spent on daily life stuff. And I like gym and friends and stuff like that. Recess.
Well, it's a great place to be. All my friends are here, and we just got a nice range of classes and courses we could take through DLC and from the school. And it's just awesome that we could do lots like my power engineering and maths, and as well as like personal fitness. Also, the amount of sports and activities we get around here, like basketball, track, football, volleyball. And it's just awesome that we could play with other schools, play against other schools, play with other schools for football. But it's just a great place to be, and all these opportunities we get.
I enjoy school. Like, I enjoy showing up every day and getting to see everybody, like my friends, and just getting to participate in something.
I just like how I can meet new people. Like when new kids come by to our school, I love just interacting with them, like trying to make them feel welcome to our school.
I think school is a fun place where you can learn, you can spend time with your friends, and you can make great memories with the people that you care about.
Hello. I just wanted to say thanks to all the students who have participated today. That takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there and to share your story and even your thoughts. And thanks to for all of you who are watching. I'm not sure who's out there. My name is Shelley Eckstein, like Einstein, but not so smart. Fun fact, share the same birthday as Einstein, not the same year. Also to clarify, some days the same hair. Anyways, today my presentation will be in two parts. And the first being a brief history into why school started. And the second part, we're going to take a deeper dive into the great cosmic question of why are we here? In school, that is. So not the bigger life question. So let's jump right in. So Mike, let's start with the history of education. It's important that we understand where we came from. That's just valuable to lay the foundation of what are we doing in school? Why are we here? So the first record of formal education is, Mike, if we go to the next slide, there we go. The first record of any kind of formal education dates back to about 2060 BC, so roughly 4,000 years ago. And it was in Mesopotamia, which is modern day Iraq. If you think of it, well, first of all, the ancient world didn't have a language like we do. And so they started schools to preserve their history, their tradition, because the only way to pass it along was verbally. People didn't know how to read. People didn't have the ability to write. And so it was passed on through storytelling. So they thought it would be a great idea to start a school where language was written down and this information could be passed on in different ways. When it began, the only record was that it was available to boys and really to wealthy families. If you think about it, think about your own baby pictures, your own story. That's valuable to us because it gives us, we like to hear about that because it gives us an idea of where we're from, who we were like, where we're going, all of that kind of stuff. It grounds us in our roots. And that was how schools started out. Through the centuries, it evolved into something bigger. Girls traditionally were not allowed to go to school because they were needed for the large families. So the girls would be doing a lot of domestic duties. Eventually, girls were allowed to be educated, but that's really only been in recent history. School was a privilege, and generally just for the wealthy families of those cultures. As it grew, sciences, math, languages, they became a part of school life as well. Of course, in ancient cultures, there was more hand-to-hand combat. Boys would learn about archery and fighting. So I'm glad that we can focus on other things now. In the 1100s, the churches established more education for the poor. That's more of our kind of the foundation for our modern schools. So they were initially founded because people couldn't read. So they educated priests to become those people who could read and teach the illiterate population about values and faith and that sort of stuff. So that's really where school was, modern school kind of got its basis. The goal ultimately was to create well-rounded, knowledgeable people who made themselves and their communities better. And that's really, in a nutshell, how school all started. So a few weeks ago, many of you celebrated Hundreds Day. So I thought it'd be fun to jump back 100 years to 1924. And what did school look like in Canada 100 years ago? 100 years ago, only 50% of children went to school. So look around your class, take out half of them. Where were they? They were working. People, again, had large families. Farming was a major way to make a living. And so they needed the extra hands on deck to work on the farms. Most schools were just one room, all grades combined. And teachers' duties really have changed. So back in the day, back in 1924, a teacher would start their day with starting a fire to keep the school warm. Of course, our teachers don't have to do that. And when the students arrived, it was her duty to make sure their fingernails and their teeth were clean. So I don't know if teachers want to start doing that again, but I know I don't want to be starting my day with looking in people's mouth. We can be grateful for modern hygiene practices. Also, technology has so changed. There's no calculators or internet, even pens and pencils. You didn't run to Walmart to get your supplies. And so students would learn on a small mini chalkboard, and that's where they would learn to practice writing. Another change, school only lasted 5 months. We've doubled that, again, to accommodate children working. And you were only expected to go to school from ages 5 to 14. So that means all of you in grade 8, this would be your last year. And this one is for those of you who take a bus. They actually did walk 5 to 10 kilometers to get to school. It was that important to them. So we can, again, be grateful for those transportations that actually get us to school. Another drastic change is if you misbehaved or didn't do your schoolwork, it was quite normal for the teacher to rap your knuckles with a stick. Girls usually got a little bit more lucky, and they would have to write lines, kind of like Bart Simpson in the beginning of The Simpsons. I will not do this, I will not do this, or something like that. But the one thing that has remained is the ability to read and do math and learn about the sciences. That was a big part of school. So this is just for fun. I took a trip down memory lane and found some images from school in the 80s, also known as the happiest decade in the last 100 years. And here's the items I went to school with. So the first one you see there is a wooden desk. And they were so uncomfortable. They broke all the time. But the fun thing was, because they were wooden, bored students would carve names and swear words into it. Probably where I learned most of the bad words from when I was in high school. But the greatest danger of the 80s was probably when you put your hand under the desk and discovered somebody else's gum. Usually it was a cluster. And this was in the days before hand sanitizer. So any of you who have experienced that, you know the ick factor of finding desk gum. Next to that is the OG computer. These massive humming beasts didn't enter school until the mid-80s. And again, you can look at that and just see, here we are. I'm on my laptop. You guys are all over the province. Here we are. Technology has just grown exponentially since then. Chalkboards. Chalkboards were the smart boards of my day. So in my day, our teachers would write notes on the board, and it was our job to write them all down. I had one teacher, he had an allergy to chalk dust kind of felt bad for the guy, but he wore these little finger things to help him not have an allergic reaction. And sometimes it was a disciplinary action. You would have to punch out the chalkboard brushes. It wasn't a pleasant task. Now, next to it, there's something you just simply don't see anymore. The staff room was the school spot for hotboxing. Teachers would smoke. And if you needed to get access to a teacher at recess or lunch hour, it was an experience all of its own when that door opened and smoke billowed out like a 80s rock concert. They should have put some lasers to go with it. I think that could have made it a little bit even more fun to ask for math help. Students also had a designated smoking area outside. And that's changed drastically. And then we see a typewriter there. In the 80s, it was very common. You would have a typing class. And my typing teacher, Mr. Angeloni, would walk around with a big book, and he would threaten to hit us if we looked at our keys. I never saw him ever hit anybody, but to this day, I can remember ASDF space JKL semicolon. So thank you, Mr. Maloney, for a skill. I'm a fast typer, if nothing else. Overhead projector. I know you guys have seen these. In the 80s, it was just part of a classroom. Again, it was a next level of technology. Teachers would write notes on a clear piece of plastic, put it on the overhead projector, and we would copy our notes from there. And finally, gym clothes. You can see fashion has changed. Today we're going to learn a new word. It's called Fortrel, and that was the fabric of the 80s. Fortrel, I'm sure NASA has used to build rockets because that stuff doesn't break down. I'm sure somewhere in a landfill you will find those outfits. So that was school in the 80s. From a mental health perspective, mental health wasn't a thing. We didn't talk about it. Nobody asked how you were feeling. It wasn't a topic of conversation. So that's another piece of education where we have really progressed in the last decades. So what's the purpose of education today? Really, it hasn't strayed that far from when school first started. It's to give you knowledge, to give you skills, to build well-rounded people, physically, mentally, intellectually. That still remains the purpose of education now. Looks very different, but that's essentially what we're going for. So let me introduce you to the cosmic educational egg. That wasn't a typo. That was bad spacing on my part. So it's not the cosmic education egg. Well, that could be French. I could be wrong. Anyway, I want you to think of education like an egg. Let me indulge you. Buckle up. Let's go for a ride here. The yolk represents you. The white represents your community, your country, and the shell of the egg would represent the globe, our world as a whole, as we're all contained in that simple structure, right? Us, our story, the world. So let's start with the yolk. That's you. I want you to take a moment and just imagine your life with no school. Now, I know some of you are like, hey, okay, that's not a bad thing. And let's be honest, back in the COVID days, those first early weeks, a lot of people they were like, we're okay with this. But as those weeks turned into months, it became less and less fun. So think of your life with no education. What would you be doing? What would you be missing? What even might be better? There's so much that goes into education, and we are so privileged to have it that we often don't think of what we would be missing. A few years ago, I traveled to Germany, and it was my first experience being in a country that doesn't speak English as a first language. And it gave me some insight as to actually how important it is to be able to read. Traveling around, the signs looked dangerous, but I didn't know what they said. Going to fill up the car with gas, I didn't really know what I was putting in there, right? If I had been injured, how would I communicate that? I know before I left, I remember I learned Hilfa, ich bin Canadian. Pardon me to all the Germans for my very bad accent there. Help me, I'm a Canadian. So it did put me in a very vulnerable position. Even when shopping, I knew enough to count, but I didn't have the ability to do math in German quickly, right? So then when I'm shopping, it was very easy to be ripped off and not understand. And honestly, it was also quite lonely because we were there for 5 weeks, and a lot of Europeans do speak 2 languages or more, and English is one of them. But for the most part, I was quite lonely. It was very hard to communicate with other people, very limited. And it gave me a greater appreciation of just having that ability to speak, to read, to understand language and interact with it. Without an education, you put yourself at risk. Education protects you. It gives you more opportunities. Without it, you're limited to what kind of work you can do, what kind of activities you can do. And you also limit your own personal safety. If you don't understand the world around you, you're putting yourself at risk. But even more importantly, education is power to you as a person. If you look statistically at countries where poverty has been deadly, educating the women and the girls was a game changer. You learn about germs, you learn about hygiene, you learn about all of those things that protect us. And so school isn't just about learning facts, but it teaches you about your world, about yourself, about interacting with other people, and how to function in the world. Education is power. So the white of the egg, that's your community. We looked at some consequences to yourself not being educated, but what about your community? As a counselor in Sun West School Division, I get to go to a lot of schools, and I love going out to the colonies. And so I have to thank them because they helped me do this section of it, because they are a unique group, right? So what about a whole community not knowing how to speak a language, how to do math? And on the colonies, their first language is not English. They learn High German and Low German, and then they learn English. So I asked them, what would it be like if your colony didn't? And they said, as farmers, they wouldn't be able to keep up with modern practices. They wouldn't be able to interact with the English people around them. They would have difficulty accessing any kind of services. They would be very, very isolated. It would be very easy for people to take advantage of them. And that's why they're committed to learning English and having an English education, because that's the world they live in. It would be so easy for people to take advantage of them and their resources. And as an entire community, they would be vulnerable if they didn't have an English education. Now, another example from history, let's imagine back in the day, our Indigenous population actually knew how to read English, knew the treaties that they were signing. Does that change the whole course of history? I think probably it was. How many chiefs would have actually signed off onto that? Again, education is power to an individual. Education is power to a collective group. Finally, the shell of the egg. We're going to go bigger now. Imagine a world where only a small group of the population has any education. We're back to ancient days then. That means we can say goodbye to modern medicine, to heat, to internet, to video games, to indoor rinks and pools, to air travel. And those are just the things we enjoy in our modern world. Because we have that foundation of learning, we all can live in a global community where we can share ideas, talk to people who live thousands of miles away, and have a whole different perspective on life. So we all, as a world, need to be skilled and knowledgeable to work together as a planet and to get along. We need to learn how to sift through truth and nonsense and have the skills to stretch your brain far enough to understand the person next to you and the person who lives a globe away from you. Otherwise, we're never going to reach a better world for everyone. School gives us that opportunity to develop ourselves, understand others, and the world we live in. That, at its core, is the primary goal of education. Learning the basics like reading and math, but also history and geography and science and philosophy and the arts and music and sport. It should make us more compassionate, more curious, more healthy, and kind people. And that is the best part of being human. Wouldn't we all want to live in a world where we all strive for that? Another big question to ask yourself, and again, thank you to my colony kids, because we had a good discussion on this. Is education a right? Is education a privilege? The answer, honestly, is both. In Canada, it is law that no matter your gender, race, religion, how much money you have the right to be educated. In fact, it is against the law for you not to go to school, whether that be through public, private, or homeschooling options. And this law applies to anyone between the ages of 5 and 21. In fact, human rights protects your right to learn. But it is also a privilege, because even in 2024, there are many children in the world, and again, especially girls, who are denied that right. And I know that all of you watching, obviously you're in school. So just know, for the most of the history of humanity, that has not been a thing. And we are so fortunate to have school available to us for free. It is your human right to have access to education. Next slide, my producer. Well, that didn't really pop up well. The slide should say, what does math have to do with anything? So we learn history so we know where we came from, and hopefully how not to make the same mistakes of the past. We learn ELA so we can communicate ideas, concepts, feelings, build relationships, and compassion. We learn science to understand the world around us. Gym and health classes focus on the well-being of our bodies. But here's the question I get asked all the time. Why math? When am I ever going to use math? And I remember asking my math teacher that very same question. And she said to me, and I'll never forget this, she said, you'll never use square roots or most of these complicated mathematical calculations and equations. But she said, you will spend all of your life using that part of your brain that solves problems and reminds you you can do hard things if you keep trying. Math is to your brain what gym is to your body. No one has ever asked me, what is the point of dodgeball? We played dodgeball with harder balls. So I think we were more motivated to get out of the way. But nonetheless, dodgeball has been around forever. What's the point of dodgeball? Nobody ever asked that. However, I know you're all thinking, well, it's good physical exercise. But for those of you who drive in the springtime and all these potholes, pop up, it's kind of good to have those reflex actions so you can dodge them and not hit the ditch. That's my own take on, maybe why we learned dodgeball. And anyways, thank you, Mr. Hayes in Etonia for dodgeball every time I walk through your gym. Anyway, math builds that same brain muscle, that part of your brain that solves problems. Our speakers have already talked about learning to overcome mental health stuff. That part of your brain, solving problems, making it unique to you, math exercises that muscle. Math, you use it all the time. When you're cooking, when you're playing a game, when you're learning an instrument. Music is incredibly mathematical. When you're playing sports, math is everywhere. And, are you ever going to use those? Most of you know. Probably not. But I hope my pharmacist is good at math and can look at a prescription and say, oh no, like that dose, that could kill you, right? Math does save lives. Math exams probably won't kill you. They'll stress you out. They're not going to kill you. But math is important because it's everywhere in our world. It's everywhere. And so it may look like silly numbers, but it actually expands our capacity to function. And in presenting this, I was looking at a lot of research on math and mental health. And so to my schools, I'm just throwing it out there. If you want me to come in and dig deeper into this, it's a lot of fun. It's quite fascinating, actually, just the whole piece of math and mental health. So finally, to wrap up, we looked at a short history of education and how it's changed through centuries. We examined what life would look for us individually and collectively as a human race without it. The last century has had more advances than any other century before it, not just in technology, but in human relationships, in human rights, in getting to know and understand people different than us. And could that possibly be because up until 100 years ago, school wasn't really available to anyone? Imagine a world, let's just take Steve Jobs, Bill Gates. We're on the internet right now. Imagine a world where they weren't allowed any kind of education, nor the people who have come alongside them and done that. And that's just one small example. I'm not even getting into mechanical and medical and all sorts of other advances. Being able to understand the world around us in all capacities is a wonderful thing. School gives us skills that help us relate to one another and learn about our passions and interests. It's not just about facts and figures. One of the greatest predictors of being able to rise above poverty is a solid education. And another great thing about being human is we get to choose. You might have to go to school, but you get to choose how much you want to put into it. You get to choose how much you want to put into your relationships, into your sport, into whatever. We get to choose. And that's again, you guys aren't out on the farm working at age 10, right? You have an opportunity to learn, and that is amazing. School is about wonder and curiosity and connecting to other people. And that ultimately makes ourselves, our communities, and our planet an amazing place to be. We learn we can do hard things when we're in school. And we also learn how to fail and how to get back up again when we do. What does this have to do with mental health? Exactly that. As Carly said, she had setbacks, but you learn how to conquer, how to not just be a victim of whatever your struggles are, but how to rise above. Education is power, and we need to change how we look at it and be so grateful. I'm so grateful for my education. I had some crazy teachers, but I'm grateful for them. I wouldn't be sitting here before you today if I didn't. Anyways, I asked earlier if education was a right and a privilege. I would like to add one more thing. Could education also be our responsibility? Our responsibility to ourselves, our responsibility to our community, our responsibility to our world. And I want you to think about that and maybe have some discussions in your classrooms afterwards. So thank you for sharing this pocket of time with me. I'm now going to turn it over to another video, and my dear friend Liza, who is a superwoman of many, many talents, and she will be speaking right after the video. So thank you for listening.
To be honest, obligation. My grandparents are school teachers. My mom is an EA, so I just feel the obligation to go to school, and I enjoy learning.
In the morning, when I realize I have school, it's the social aspect of it that really gets me going. I'm a very social person, and simply talking to friends or hanging out at recess is really just what I get up for, and obviously learning, but I'm really social and could chat hours with my friends.
I show up to school every day because if I don't, I'm probably going to be pretty dumb and I have no choice.
I show up every day because I get to learn a lot of new stuff, and without it, you will not have a future.
Well, I don't like mornings very much, but always coming here and seeing all my friends, all my buddies, always make my day way better. And just hanging out with my friends, goofing around, and just makes my day a lot better.
I think it's important to have a good education, and then I can get a job I want and have a career, family, or move on, be important in the world.
Is the thought of seeing my friends, hanging out with them in my school, and like the thought of playing the sports that I love, like volleyball, badminton, and basketball.
The reason that I like to go to school is because I have a lot of friends there, and also I want to get a good education so that I can become something like an interior designer. I also think school is a place where everybody can be culturally inclusive and you can always feel welcome.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Shelley, for reminding each of us of the greater value and purpose of school. Thank you to the students for giving their thoughts and opinions on why they keep showing up every day. The topic of school is so fascinating because it's something that benefits the individual, it benefits our community, and it benefits a greater society, like Shelley was talking about. However, there's many things that actually would pull us away from school. We've started to notice that attendance can be sometimes a bit of a challenge, whether that is things like sports, and we have some sporting events to get to, whether it's family time, appointments, sometimes it's even work. And sometimes it's working on the farm. Some of you work out and help your families. So there's no doubt that these things are valuable as well, and they are very important. But the reality is that sometimes they do take a lot of time away from school. Going along with what Carly and Farah have talked about as well, there's also other challenges in life that can sometimes make it difficult to show up to school every day. Many of us are busy. We live very busy lives. We live in a busy society. We maybe have some late nights. We sometimes feel very tired, very exhausted. It can be really hard for us to get up in the mornings to apply ourselves to school. We feel like we maybe have nothing left to give. We feel overwhelmed and maybe just really exhausted. There's other struggles as well that can make it tough to, show up to school and can make school hard for us. I know that Carly mentioned this as well, that it was with her struggles with mental health, it made it hard for her to show up to school. The reality is that some of us are struggling with that. We wake up, we're not having a great day. We feel anxious, we feel depressed. We don't want to get out of bed, let alone go to school and then do the tasks that are being asked of us there. You can see, I also put on there, sometimes we just struggle with the purpose of school. And Shelley's absolutely right. I've never heard anybody ask, what's the purpose of gym class? Why do we play dodgeball? But we do here. Why do we do math, right? So sometimes the units, the topics, the assignments, we look at them, we think they're not applicable to life. And we'll never use this information when we grow up. So that can make it hard. That can make school hard for us to keep showing up every day. Sometimes it's friends. We struggle with friendships. We have, we're trying to navigate these relationships and these friendships and the people that we see on a regular basis. And sometimes we just don't see that it's fun. We want to have fun. We all naturally want to have fun in our lives. And so when we come to school, maybe we see it's really hard to have fun. Sometimes too, we have other struggles going on. Sometimes people have, family issues. They've moved to a new community. Maybe there's been a loss or a death of somebody. So we have some other challenges and hardships happening in our lives. Those can make it hard to focus at school. And then it can become difficult to show up to school. And we just don't see it as being a priority.
or that it's an importance at this point in time because we have some bigger stuff going on. But on the flip side of that, as you heard in the videos, there is some students that, they love coming to school. It's a safe space for them. It's a positive environment, and they do see the fun in it. And it can be one of their favorite places to be during the week. They enjoy hanging out with their friends. They enjoy the breaks, the recess, the gym class, the sports, whatever it might be, the subjects that they're learning, the assignments that they have. They just really do enjoy that. But whatever your opinion is on school, we all kind of have different thoughts and different opinions about it. Whether you attend regularly, you struggle with attendance, whether you have mental health struggles or you don't, wherever you're at, the reality is that we all have the ability to be a resilient person. And that's what I want to talk to you guys today about, is how do we build resilience, no matter what life circumstances come our way. And sometimes instead of responding with resilience and grit and strength, we respond by avoiding or procrastinating. Avoidance and procrastination, sometimes they feel like they're going to serve us well in the short term, and immediately we maybe have some relief because we don't have to deal with the task or the challenge that is ahead of us and in front of us. But long term, the responding with avoidance and procrastination can actually increase our stress levels. What happens is that we have this task ahead of us, and it seems overwhelming, it seems challenging, it seems hard to overcome that challenge. And so what happens is we avoid, we procrastinate, we delay the task. And then pretty soon we feel more overwhelmed because now the task seems harder and heavier, and it is a lot harder to overcome that task. So what happens then is we avoid and procrastinate again, and we avoid and procrastinate until it has to be done. This is going to increase our stress levels, and this starts to become a cycle. And so the question you might be asking is, what is resilience, and how can we be students that respond with resilience? Going to watch a video quickly. Okay, there's a little science for you. But how does that relate to resilience? So resilience is actually the ability to face a challenge or face a hardship or an obstacle in life. It's going to impact us, but then we have the ability to bounce back to our original state. So when we watch that tennis ball in slow motion, it comes down slow motion, and we see the original shape of the tennis ball. And what happens when it hits that concrete or that hard surface, we can see that its shape is adjusted, and sorry, Mike, we'll go back to the tennis ball. There we go. So the shape is adjusted and it's changed, but then it does bounce back to its original state. So when challenges and obstacles come our way, which they're going to, we are all going to face some sort of stressors in life. When we can be resilient, though the challenge, the obstacle won't weaken us, but rather it will help to strengthen us and help us to be have more of an impact in the community that we live in. There's a really good analogy that I'm going to get you guys to think about that can help us better understand what resilience is. And this is not the same type of egg. I'm going to refer back to what Shelley was talking about with an egg, but I want you to think about a carrot, an egg, and ground coffee beans. Okay, so a carrot as an object, if we were to go to our fridge and we pull a carrot out of our fridge, It is firm and it's strong. We drop it on the ground, we can pick it up and it's still going to be in its same state and structure. An egg, on the other hand, we know eggs are very fragile. We pull an egg out of the fridge and we drop it on the ground and it's going to break, right? But an egg it's fragile, but it's protected by its shell. It's also very soft inside. But when we think about ground coffee beans, they are strong. They have a strong aroma about them, and they're also soft and they're also firm. Now, if we place all three of these objects into boiling water, which is like representing the hardships and the obstacles that we face in life, they're all going to face the same hardship, the same challenge, but what happens to them? And if we put a carrot into boiling water, we pull it out, the carrot becomes soft. It loses its strength. It's no longer firm anymore. If we think about an egg, we put an egg into boiling water. When we pull that egg out, that egg is now hardened from the inside. It's no longer soft and fragile. The interesting thing is that with the coffee beans, we put those ground coffee beans into boiling water. We pull them out. They have actually maintained their shape. They've maintained the same structure that they are. But the interesting thing about the coffee beans is that they have now impacted and strengthened the water around it. So the aroma of the coffee beans now will fill the room and fill the space. And what the coffee beans do to the pot of water is it will actually impact the water and change the environment, because it will now form it into coffee. So the question is, what do you become when you're faced with a challenge or a hardship? Do you become soft and weak like the carrot? Do you harden from the inside like the egg, where you harden yourself to the world around you? Or perhaps you become resilient like the ground coffee beans, and you grow and you can impact the world around you. And so with that, I want you to think about, what are you like when you face hardships and challenges in your life? And then I want to get you guys thinking about 5 different strategies to help us build resilience. And I know the phrase now is strats. I'm going to leave you with 5 strats, okay, to help us build resilience at school. Resilience is actually something that you all have within yourselves. It may just need to be enhanced or strengthened. So strategy number 1 is connection. We are actually all wired for connection and belonging. We need people in our lives that understand us, that get us. And a lot of the students talked about that. That's why they get up and come to school every day. It's because of their friends. It's because of those connections that they have. And I know Farah and Carly talked about it too, that, talk to those people. So strategy number 1 that helps us to build resilience is those relationships, those connections that we have, whether it is a classmate, whether it's a friend, whether it is a teacher, an EA, a counselor. It could be one person, it could be 5 people, it could be a group of people. But ultimately, those connections, the people that can understand us, that can support us, can hold us accountable, those are the people that can bring joy into our lives. Those are the people that can motivate us to keep showing up. They can make the experiences more joyful and make our days just really make sense, right? And when we're struggling, we've got our people. When we're having a positive experience, we've got our people. Ultimately, find your people. So strategy number 1, connection, find your people. Strategy number 2 is approach the challenge. Instead of avoiding, procrastinating, we can approach the challenge. Okay. The challenge might be a big exam. The challenge might be a project. It might be an assignment. Maybe it's friendships, navigating some friendships that are challenging. But with every challenge that comes our way, we have the opportunity to approach it, to face it and to overcome it. So one way of approaching the challenge is to break it up into smaller tasks. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that famous saying. I was going to put an elephant on my slide, but I decided not to. But the famous saying that you can't eat an elephant all in one bite, but you can eat it in multiple bites. And so same thing, when we have a challenge, break it up into smaller tasks. And when each day you can just kind of conquer some of those smaller tasks. And before you know it, the big task that felt so overwhelming is now you were able to achieve it. So it might mean that you have to look at your schedule. You might have to set some time aside and just to work on those smaller tasks. But the big thing is to recognize that, when we do have a challenge, it does feel overwhelming. That's normal for it to feel overwhelming. But if we approach the challenge, we break it up into smaller tasks, we can overcome that challenge and we can face it. Now, to go along with that, strategy number 3 is to build healthy habits. And this really does go along with approaching the challenge, because what we do today will impact us tomorrow. And to build healthy habits, a big thing that I want you to think about is just for today. What can I do just for today? And as we start to focus on just for today, we are able to start to build some new patterns in our lives. So maybe it's just for today. If you struggle with getting to school on time, maybe just for today, or just for tomorrow, I'm going to set my alarm 15 minutes earlier and I'm going to try to get to school on time, just for today. And then tomorrow becomes the new just for today. Or just for today, I'm going to put my phone away for 15 minutes and I'm going to study for my exam, or I'm going to work on this assignment. And just for today, I'm going to do 15 minutes. And then tomorrow I can do just for today. And pretty soon what happens is we start to rewire those pathways in our brain, because every task that we do is wiring pathways in our brain. And so if we start to just do some of those simple tasks and do some of these tasks just for today, we start to build healthier patterns, which then build pathways and new pathways in our brain that can help us to build these new healthy habits. Okay, strategy number 4, purpose and passion. The question is, can you see the greater purpose of school? Thinking back to what Shelley was talking about, can you see how school benefits you personally, benefits our communities, and benefits our society as a whole? Can you see that the purpose of school is greater than just learning, but it's teaching us many other skills like Shelley was talking about? Some of those skills are things like how to respect someone and someone that's in authority, how to work with others, and time management, critical thinking, cooperation, listening, comprehending and accomplishing tasks. So many of these skills are transferable to life. And as we continue to get older and we use some of these skills, we're going to use them in the workforce. And when we get a job and we get older, we graduate, we move on from school, we're going to use these skills. They're transferable skills in the workplace, in our families, in our relationships, our friendships, when we're playing a sport, when we're playing an instrument. These are what we would call like our softer skills. So these are the skills that it's not just the curricular learning, but it's the other skills that we're learning when we're doing these tasks at school. And in addition to purpose, I also want to just encourage you to find something that you're passionate about and pursue that area of interest. I know there's some really fantastic teachers that have done an amazing job to help students bring their passion and their interest into some of the projects and assignments in class. And that's fantastic. We also want to think about, what do we enjoy at school? Find that thing that you enjoy. We're not all going to love math. We're not all going to love reading, but find that thing that motivates you. Find that thing that brings you joy, that you're passionate about. It could be a sport. It might be an activity, a volunteer opportunity, a project. It might even just be those friendships, right? But finding that thing that motivates you, make time for it, pursue it, and bring it into your everyday life, whatever that might look like. Okay. And lastly, finally, strategy number 5. I want to leave you with this last point, which is take time to rest. We're not Energizer bunnies. And as we approach Easter and Easter break, I thought it was funny to, that it relates to a bunny, but we're not Energizer bunnies. We can't just keep going and going and going and going and going. We actually need time to rest, to refuel our bodies. But we also don't want to become lazy. And rest doesn't mean just sleep. Rest actually can mean eating some nourishing foods. It can mean, putting the phone away and going out for a walk. It can mean drawing or painting or listening to music. But really, in our busy lives, we live in a very, very busy culture, and many of us we're very scheduled. We have a lot of organized sports. We have a lot of organized activities. We have jobs to go to. We have homework to do. We have school to attend. And then when we do have free time, a lot of us are filling our free time with screens. And so I just want to encourage you to find some time to do the things, not the have to do's, but do the things that you love to do and that you want to do. And, that is allowing time away from those organized activities, allowing some free time, putting the screens away. And I want to encourage you, even possibly entertain the idea of being bored for a little bit. But really, at the end of it, it's all about finding balance, finding that time to do the things that you love to do and that you want to do. That might be dirt biking. It might be skidooing. It might be reading a book. It might be laying in a hammock. It might be going out for a walk. But we do need to rest. Our bodies actually are designed to rest. We can't just keep going. We need to refuel our bodies in a variety of different healthy ways. So I want to encourage you to try to find some time for rest. And as I end my time with you today, I want to refer back to what Shelley was talking about with the egg. What type of egg are you? Remember that you are part of a global egg. What you do impacts the whole egg. It impacts you individually. It impacts our communities, and it impacts our globe and our world as a whole. And so I want to encourage you to find your strength, find your resilience to do the hard. We can do the hard. We can persevere. We can find that strength and resilience. 5 of those ways that I want to remind you of: connect with someone, connect with your people, find your people, approach the challenges that you are faced with, and build those healthy habits, rewire some of those brain pathways, right? Build those healthy habits just for today. Find your purpose, find your passion, and take time to rest. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to me. And I want to leave you being an excellent student and human. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Liza and Shelley, for reminding us how important education really is and to keep practicing resilience in our daily lives. Many students face stress about school. Sometimes this takes place directly in a classroom. How can we as students self-regulate in a confined room while learning surrounded by peers? Please welcome Nikki Martins to discuss physical and mental self-regulation in the classroom.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nikki Martins, and I am the occupational therapist for Sunwest School Division. I was here last year at Managing Your Mind, and I talked about body breaks and how preparing your body for work or regulating your body through movement can help you be ready to learn. I still believe this is a really important message. When our bodies are regulated, we are better able to take in information and learn more effectively. I think an important part of this is taking breaks when you can, when it's appropriate and necessary. I also mentioned last year that there are tons of different ways and things you can do for body breaks or to prepare your body for learning. and that each person needs to figure out what works best for them to be effective. What everyone needs differs from person to person, and therefore regulating our bodies looks quite different from one another. This is a really important message and still true, but today I wanted to focus on a different way of regulating our bodies and preparing ourselves for learning, other than taking breaks from the room. So we're going to focus on what you can do to regulate your body while staying in the classroom to start. Sometimes it's not a good time to leave the classroom because the teacher's giving important instructions, or you're working on an assignment, or you have a test. Sometimes our teachers say, no, we're not able to take a break right now, and we have to respect that. However, respecting that no doesn't mean we just have to sit and be uncomfortable in our bodies. I'm going to give you a few tips and tricks today that might help support your body in case this happens. One thing that can be really helpful when we want to move our bodies, but we have to stay in our chairs, is sitting heavy work or self-applied deep pressure. I'm going to go through a few examples of this. Feel free to try out any of them. One of the things that I like to show is chair push-ups. So that's when you're going to sit right in your chair. You're going to put your hands on the chair beside you and push up. If everyone's sitting, you can try this. Try holding your body weight for 5 seconds. While you're trying to talk, you can tell it is a little bit noticeable, but there are lots of times you can do it in class where it can be very discreet and not noticed. You can also try tricep dips where you're using your chair to push up on and get that feeling of heavy work through your arms. You can do dots and squeezes all over your hands or arms to give your brain and body something else to focus on. It also helps reset our body with that deep pressure regulation. You can do palm or hand presses where you can really feel the tension go all the way from your hands up into your shoulders. You can do finger pulls, self hugs, head pushes. Be careful with this one because you don't want to put too much pressure on your neck. But sometimes giving that deep pressure through the top of your head or even through your hands onto your head can help your body to reset and regulate. Even just things like stretching out your legs or your arms, or again, your neck, can help you to get that movement you're craving, to help your body reset in that moment, to help deal with some of those feelings that are going on inside your body or your brain. But those kind of movements can keep us in our chairs, can decrease distraction to our peers around us, and can be done in those situations when we're not able to leave. I recommend that you all try one of these right now and see if it makes any difference in your body. Hopefully it does. Sometimes it's not okay to leave the room for the break, but you really need to move your body. You can't focus. There's things going on like that you just need to stand up. You need to move. After this presentation might be a great time to start to have these conversations with your teacher. Is there a place where you can go in the back of the room, where you can walk back and forth, where you can sway, where you can weight shift from one leg to the other to kind of get that feeling of movement through your body? Is there a counter at the back that you might be able to stand at to do work? Is there a standing desk in the room? Is there a different seating option that might provide you with some of that movement? This is a great conversation to start to have with your teachers so they understand where you are coming from when you ask those type of questions. It's important that you can stay in the room during instruction time. So getting these options and these things set ahead of time can help not distract classmates, can help you listen to what the teacher's saying, can help you move your body within a space. Sometimes our body doesn't need to move, but our brain is on overload. I know we've talked a lot today about anxious thoughts, racing thoughts, anxiety, can't focus, those type of things that are taking up all of our brain power. It can be really hard to listen when all these things are taking over our brain. A few things you can try in these moments to stop and reset your brain so it's able to fixate on something other than what's going on in there. So it's able to focus on the content of class, are things like taking a drink from a water bottle. It might seem really small, but taking that drink can just help reset your brain and body. Especially drinking from a straw can actually give some of that heavy work to your jaw, to the small muscles in your mouth and jaw, and help you to kind of get some of that regulation. Doing breathing exercises. I know I talked about those last day. I talked about there are videos that you can play to help with breathing exercises. That might not be allowed during class time when you're having to stay in focus, but there's things you can do where you're just counting, taking a deep breath in for 5 counts, holding it for 3, and then taking a deep breath out. Lots of Apple Watches and things like that nowadays have breathing things that you can follow. Tracing a breathing exercise on your desk or something like that is another way you can use breathing exercises in that. Mindfulness is a really great one that you can practice when you're outside of class and then bring it to yourself when you're in that class or in that tough situation where you're not able to leave. If you've done the work ahead of time, you can bring those tools into that setting and it can really help out. One I really like is progressive muscle relaxation. So this is a nice tool to be able to use very discreetly in the classroom that can really help reset that whole body. I'd love it if you all tried it with me. I can't see you, so I'm just going to hope you are. But how progressive muscle relaxation is you pick a body part and you tense that body part for a few seconds. I'm going to go with 5. And then you relax it and then you move to another body part. I love starting at the bottom. So if everyone can crunch their toes in their shoes, keeping their toes really, really tight and hold it for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and relaxing it. Now working at tensing those calves for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and relaxing them. Tensing your thighs for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and then shaking them out. Tensing your stomach muscles, feeling everything tighten up for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then relaxing. Moving to your hands, keeping them nice and tight for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then relaxing. Tensing up those arms and biceps for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and relaxing. And lastly, working at all those muscles in your face, tensing them up for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and relaxing. It can really give your brain and body that reset that you need to be able to focus on what's going on in class, to be able to regulate what's going on inside your body. Again, everyone works differently, so see if any of these things work for you, and if they do, they can be a great way to help you give that body break, give your brain a break when you need it. The last thing I want to quickly mention is there are things you can do before school or during built-in breaks, like classes or like between classes or like recess or lunch breaks to help prepare your body for more stationary classes or more difficult times, like when you know you have a big test or an assignment coming up. When you have times like this, it can really make your body feel uncomfortable. You might feel nervous or anxious. Sometimes it can make you feel sick, or you might not want to come to school because of it. One thing you can try and do is create a sensory plan to prepare your brain and body for these tougher times. A sensory plan is just a fancy way of coming up with a few things that help our different sensory systems in our body feel calmer. This can include our sense of smell or taste, our visual system or what we see, our auditory system or what we hear, and our other senses that impact how our body moves through space. I talked a little bit about them last year, your proprioceptive and vestibular sense, but those just mean how your body is moving, kind of. When we find things that help these systems feel calmer, it can help our entire brain and body feel calmer, and it will help us approach the task or assignment or test or class in a more regulated way. Again, I think it's important to note everyone is different, and what makes one person feel calm or ready might make someone feel too activated or too big or not activated enough and too drowsy. So each person really has to do experimenting with themselves to see what works best. Some examples of things you can try in these sensory plans include, but are not limited to, listening to calming music, listening to white noise, or listening to your favorite song and seeing how your body feels after that. Having a snack, Crunchy snacks especially are great for getting our jaws working. Chewing gum, if we're able or allowed, depending on our setting, can help again with that jaw heavy work and regulating your body. Drinking water can help our bodies feel calmer and more ready for learning. Doing visually calming things like looking at a sensory bottle or a calm down jar, which just are tools that you can make yourself or buy that really can help you slow down that world around you. It can give you something to focus on that can help your body feel calmer. Doing activity like jumping jacks, push-ups, going for a walk, or doing heavy work, which is movements such as pushing or pulling or carrying something, can help our bodies feel more ready for school. Try doing some of these things in the morning before you go to school or on a break and see how your body feels after them if you feel more ready to go to class. I've already mentioned this one a little bit, but doing deep breathing and mindfulness before things like that can really help your body feel more ready for school. It can help lessen those feelings of anxiety and nervousness, and it can just help prepare you better for what's coming. Other times there are super specific things that help some kids feel better and make other kids feel way worse. So those are important ones to figure out on your own. But things like jumping or spinning or going on a swing, things like that can sometimes be really regulating for your body, and other times they aren't. So you have to really listen to your body and see what it feels like after, before, how your body responds to it, how class goes after that. It's important to listen to our bodies, what our bodies are telling us, and find a way to support our body in giving it what it needs within the rules and expectation of whatever environment we're in. So whether that means preparing our bodies by doing some of those things before class or finding things that are acceptable to do within class, hopefully you're leaving today with some things to try to support your own bodies. If you have lots more questions about this or this didn't make sense, try and connect with your teachers and see if they can support you. And your teachers can always reach out to me and see how we can work together to find you some answers. My email is nikki.martins@sunwestsd.ca, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the presentations. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you, Nikki, for the tips and tricks we can use to help regulate ourselves. Lastly, please welcome Grade 12 student Farah Lowe from Davidson to share how she conquers her struggles with anxiety and strategies from her toolbox.
Thank you, Carly. You saw my face earlier, but yes, my name is Farah Lowe. I'm from Davidson School, and I'm in grade 12. So I just wanted to share some of these tools that I've used on my mental health journey before I had access to things like medications and a therapist that I do now. So these are just some tips that I used early on in my mental health journey. So the three that I'll be talking about today is a checkboard, telling your peers, and don't be scared to adjust. So thank you, Mike. I'll start with this checkboard that I have. So I designed this for myself. So along the top, I have my three main stresses. So I stress about school, sometimes I stress about my relationships, and sports is another big thing for me. So along the side, you can see there's different times. So basically, I'll keep this in my camera roll, and I'm able just to resort back to it whenever I'm feeling anxious or overwhelmed, because I find for me, it's really hard to find my coping mechanisms and remember what tools when I'm really anxious. I have a bunch of things racing around my brain. That's just how anxiety works for me. It might be for other people, but this really helps me with that. So, for example, excuse me. If I'm at a volleyball tournament and I'm feeling really anxious about my next game and I have like 5 minutes, I'll put in my earbuds and I'll listen to some music. If I'm stressed about school and I have an hour or more, I'll have a nap. I personally love napping. It helps me just like reset my brain and my body as well. And that's something that I think is really important too, is your stresses aren't always exactly accurate when your body is under certain circumstances. So like, for example, that's why you see like a snack a lot, because I get really stressed and extra sensitive when I'm hungry. Same thing if I'm tired, if my clothes are uncomfortable, if I'm like sweaty after a volleyball game and I just don't feel, it just makes me feel overstimulated, so that will enhance my anxiety as well. So this is just a really great tool that you can use to resort back to. You can like customize it to whatever you want. For me, this is anxiety. For you, it might be when you're feeling sad, when you need to be motivated. If you do try this though, make sure you put in some of the tips and tricks we've learned today. Nikki, I'm definitely going to add some of yours to mine now for school. But yeah, this is just a really great tool that you can resort back to. Keeping your camera roll, and it's as easy as like writing it on a sticky note. It doesn't necessarily have to be a fancy graphic like this. It's just something that I like to keep in my camera roll. It can be a sticky note, picture of a piece of paper, whatever works for you. So that leads me into tool number 2, which is tell your peers. You can remove the graphic off the screen now, but so telling your peers, I think it's really important that mental health doesn't have to be a secret. Obviously, if you want to keep that personal, that's completely a decision up to you. But for me, since telling my peers about my anxiety, I've just had a lot more support from parents, teachers, friends. For example, I go on city trips with my friends, and driving in the city makes me very anxious. So when I go into the city, they know just to be a bit quieter or check in on me on how I'm feeling when I'm driving. And it's just that little bit of extra support that really makes a difference. Same thing for teachers. I'm in a calculus class right now. Other students are in calculus. It's hard, or for me at least it is, but it's also pretty fast-paced. So I get really anxious in lessons when I'm trying so fast to write things down. So I was able to discuss an alternative with my teacher, and she was able to provide me the notes ahead of time. So I was able just to have the notes in front of me and just worry about learning the content rather than trying to write down the notes and having my brain overstimulated, trying to look at the content and write it all down. So that was something that really helped me at school with that as well. And that leads me on to tool number 3, which is don't be scared to adjust. So that could be talking to your teacher about an alternative thing. That could be, I have these little earbuds, they're called loops. So at a volleyball tournament, it's really noisier at any other sports tournaments or games. It's very noisy and often overstimulating for a lot of athletes like myself. So these loops are just basically little earbuds that come in a little case. You can get them like off Amazon, and they're not like music or anything. They're literally just like silicone earbuds you can put in, and they're noise canceling. So it's really great and allows me just to kind of dial in, I guess, and just get in the mindset for the next game. Or I use them at school a lot. If my peers are being chatty and sometimes my brain is bouncing to different conversations at once and I just want to focus on my schoolwork, it's just polite and easy way to just remove yourself and just reset in your environment. So I'd really recommend those. I know Carly has them as well. But yeah, they're great. And any other things you need to adjust, this doesn't have to be anxiety related. You can customize these tools to fit whatever you struggle with. So just to recap on those, there's the checkboard, telling your peers, and don't be scared to adjust. And feel free to email me. My email is just farah.low@sunwestsd.ca. That's just how you spell my name. But yeah, you can email me and I can send you a blank template of the checkboard if you want to make your own. But yeah, thank you for listening. I hope you guys had some takeaways.
Thank you, Farah, for being vulnerable with us about your personal struggles and sharing your toolkit with everyone. That brings us to the end of our afternoon. I'd just like to take a minute to thank all of the presenters for their time and the knowledge they shared with us today. I'd also like to thank everyone who tuned in this afternoon. We all have very busy schedules, so taking time out of your day to learn about mental and physical health is important. We should all be proud for taking the time to care for our mind and bodies. Physical and mental wellness go hand in hand. We need to make time for our bodies before our bodies can make time for us. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day.